We're talking about measures of central tendency. We've got an example that we can use from our text. We find it on page 348. Here we go. We've got a list of various salaries for Vandelay Industries. Now, measures of central tendency are all things that we could use the word average to describe. Mean, median, mode, mid-range. So to be more specific, let's talk about how to find each one of those. The first is the mean. You add them all up and you divide by how many there are. So for our example, we just add up all these salaries. There are 9 of them. So we get our mean salary of $149,800. The median is the middle piece of data. To find the median, you put them all in order and you find the middle one. So in this case, it is $53,000. One error that we want to make sure we avoid is that we put them all in order, and then find the middle. Don't just take the list of whatever order it happens to be in and find the middle. It's got to be in order from smallest to biggest. One question that maybe has popped up: what if there is not a middle piece of data? What if there's an even number and so there's a tie for middle? On page 350 of our text, it gives us steps for finding the median, and it deals with that issue. If the number of data values is even, there will be 2 numbers in the middle of the list. The median is the mean of these 2 values. We're splitting the difference between the 2. Mode is the value that occurs the most. If there's a tie, we can use the word bimodal to describe the data set. Think bicycle has 2 wheels, bimodal has 2 modes. But if there's a bunch of ties, or if everything's only listed once, then we would just say no mode, which is what's true about this particular example. Now, when we look at all of this data, we can find, wow, it's moving without me. Strange. Let's see if I can fix this. Okay, I found my ghost. One of my children had found a mouse that was still connected. Oh, the joys of doing this at home. So anyway, let's talk about range and mid-range. The range is how far apart the biggest and the smallest are. How spread out is our data. Range is not a measure of central tendency. Mid-range is, and since they're connected, we're going to talk about both of them. But range, we take our biggest number, which in this case is 944,000, and then we look through, I think that one's our smallest. So when we're finding our range and mid-range, all we care about is the biggest one and the smallest one. Here we go. We don't care about the stuff in the middle. The range is how far apart they are. So you just take biggest minus smallest, and there you go. The mid-range is halfway between the biggest and smallest. So it's kind of like, well, it is. You're finding the mean using just the biggest and the smallest. So we add them up, divide by 2, and that gives us the mid-range. You could find the mid-range another way too if you wanted. If you figure out how far apart the biggest and the smallest are, and then you figure out, well, what would be half that distance, you could add that to the smallest one or subtract it from the biggest one. But none of those methods seem as straightforward and simple as just finding the mean of the biggest and the smallest. So finally, let's talk about, ooh, I did not spell that correctly. Let's see if we can fix it. Ooh. Not very well. Okay, let's see here. This word, O-U-T-L-I-E-R. Yikes, okay. An outlier is a value that is way out there. It's something that is like not with the rest of the clump. This example is a good example of something with an outlier. We've got all of this data that is all relatively close to each other. And then this one is just, whoa, super big, super duper big. Something that's unusually big or unusually small is an outlier. Not always will you have an outlier. If you were measuring heights of everyone in a kindergarten classroom and you included the teacher might be an outlier because the teacher would be unusually tall compared to all the rest of the kindergarten students that are in that same room. If you talked about how many free throws everyone could make in a given collection of people, maybe there wouldn't be an outlier. But if a professional basketball player happened to be there, then maybe it would be. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Let's see. How do we turn this off?